Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this monthly in-depth ag forecast for Ag Carolina and Ag South. All right, we got a lot on our plate because we're walking into a weekend here where we are expecting a pretty sizable winter storm, possibly a blizzard in parts of the Carolinas. So I got to get to that soon. But first, I just want to rewind the clock 1 week. Last weekend, we were watching one of our biggest winter storm systems in a long time hit this section of the country. And this is the latest snow depth map as of early on Friday morning on the 30th. And we still have a lot of snow in place here, including some patchy areas of snow over in the Carolinas. Now, if you look at the snow water equivalent, we were hoping that this particular snowfall event could get in and help to relieve some of the drought pressures in this entirety of this section of the United States. But the reality is that soils were frozen underneath this, meaning that none of this is really going to get in and cure some of that. Now, we do have at least two more systems coming through the Carolinas that have to be discussed here in the very near term. But as I think through all of this, I just want to give you one last update on the snow up to this point at the end of January. So I like this map. It's one I create on agweather.com. It is the season-to-date % of normal snowfall. So you can kind of get a number or in a color shading telling you, well, so far in the year, how you've been doing with snow. And if you look in the southeast, we've been okay. There's been better snows that have gotten into the Appalachian Mountains, Blue Ridge Mountains, okay? And we're still, in these shades, even at the highest elevations, but most of North Carolina is not. We've missed it. We had an ice event, of course, out of the last storm system that came through, but more of the snow was up here in Virginia. Now look on the backside of this. Look at all this. And what's very important about this snow-covered ground is that it is aiding in the return and the persistence of very cold air here. Snow being white, when the sun's light hits it, it reflects it, therefore it keeps the surface temperatures much colder. So you need to know that one of the big setup pieces to this weekend's winter storm event is because of snow that is to our west, all in through this area, okay? It's also one of the reasons why the temperature since the start of January has been kind of splitting the country north-south. Some winters we split it, we have the dividing line north-south. The temperature split is cold east, warm west. Now, some winters, especially if we have an El Niño, we split it like this, where we tend to be much more mild to the south, and we've just not seen that. I bring this up because it's been really exacerbated over the last 2 weeks. If you look at just January 14th to January 29th, much of the Carolinas are having we'll call it a top 20 coldest second half of January, and I've got more cold coming. In fact, if I had to pick a spot where the cold is going to anchor to finish this month, of course, and start the new one, it's going to be a bullseye in this area. So let's come back to that in a few seconds. But just remember, we are split west-east on our temperatures, and that is an important factor to examine because of the risk of persistence. In other words, it not going away. Now, looking forward into this forecast, we do have, as of 8 o'clock in the morning on January 30th, we have widespread winter storm warnings out for parts of Georgia, North and South Carolina. And there is a hard freeze watch warnings, extreme cold. In fact, we look at freeze watches that are all the way down to the southern tip of Florida. And I was just looking let's go check in on Disney. Where's the air coming from? Over the last 10 days, it has come out of the Arctic, out of the Canadian archipelago, through central Canada, and straight down into this part of the southeast, which means we're going to be dealing with some brutally cold temperatures coming up here. The frost risk map shows it all. We've got temperatures pushing or touching a frost all along our Gulf Coast and all the way down to the southern tip of Florida. And this is what the minimum temperatures look like nationally. I want you to see it nationally because this pattern, this west to east split on temperatures, seems to not be going away anytime soon. So this is this morning on Friday, getting into Saturday, and we got some places in the teens, but a lot of 20s and 30s. This is now Sunday. On Sunday, there will be a deep low off the coast. We'll be dealing with very strong winds on the backside of this. But to see these coastal temperatures in the teens, Wilmington, look down here, 17, 20 in Tallahassee, 13 in Atlanta. Very, very cold air on Sunday morning, and possibly a frost as far south as the outskirts of Miami. Now, as we get into Monday, still very cold. These minimum temperatures down here, maybe in the single digits, are 20 to 30 degrees colder than average. Tuesday still sticks around. Wednesday, some moderation. Look at the rest of the country, though. It's not until next Thursday that we start to see a return toward normal. But you're going to be watching next Thursday a low that's coming out of the Mid-South toward you and possibly another coastal storm system by February 5th. So a lot on the horizon here. So I want to show you what's going on in the atmosphere right now. And we have one short wave here and another little short wave right there on Friday that as I play this forward By the time we get into Saturday, we've now combined these two waves. There's the southern one and the northern one, and they have what's called a negative tilt. Now, negative tilt is generally good because that tends to get storm systems to roll north-south rather than just getting off the coast. Well, let me rephrase that. They're generally interesting because they tend to affect more folks with more adverse weather. So we tend to, yes, meteorologists, it's this fascinating forecast. But this particular shortwave, by the time you get into late Saturday night, is ejecting off the coast. And the best momentum in the flow, the transport of what we call vorticity goes offshore, which means the low goes offshore with it. And that's what's going to be critical, trying to decipher how this thing is going to work. I made a map showing the days since the last blizzard warning issued by the National Weather Service office. Okay, so when we think about the Blue Ridge Mountains, this part of the Appalachians, it has been 5,832 days since a blizzard warning has been issued by the National Weather Service. And when you have the dashes, that means we haven't. And here's the big concern about this, all right? This low pressure system that's going to try to form off the coast is going to have very strong pressure gradient on the back side of it. And that is what's going to create the strong winds necessary to, 1, reduce visibility below a quarter of a mile, 2, keep the wind speeds over 35 miles an hour, 3, there will be snow. That's the only criteria you need for blizzard, not an amount, but just snow. And the 4th thing is all of those ingredients lasting for at least 3 hours. I think we could get that. So don't be surprised over the weekend you hear of a blizzard warning. Now, this would have been a much, much bigger system if this high pressure cell would have been here. That would have pulled the flow around it like this. The low, sitting here initially, would have flow like that, and this system would have hugged the coast and gone straight north. But instead, high pressure is over Texas and Oklahoma, which is part of the reason. It's not the full reason, but this system is going to try to escape the coast rather than run the north-south length of it. I would like to show you what the high-res models are doing, though, okay? So this is getting through Friday in the middle of the day. Here we are. That's noon Friday Eastern time. Afternoon, we already start to see snow over the Appalachian Mountains getting toward the Piedmont here. And then as we play it into Friday night, getting into early Saturday morning, Saturday midday, Saturday afternoon and evening, and then getting into early Sunday morning here. This is a long duration event. The snow will finally be exiting around noon on Sunday. So from Friday to Sunday, you're dealing with this. Oh, and by the way, did you notice, if I go back here, do you see the blue that are showing up here? We think that in the overnight hours, it's possible to get snow showers or flurries as far south as Tampa. Now, how much snow are the models predicting? Well, this first model, let's go look at one other thing before I show you snow. These are wind gusts. And what I'm concerned about, look at that. Look at how strong these winds are going to be here. If we're gusting, look at the color bar, this is 35. If we're gusting over 35 miles an hour in this area and there's snow and it reduces the visibility, 3 hours, you got a blizzard warning. So be aware of that. Now, the snow. Total snow expected out of this. Here we go. This is through Friday evening, Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon and evening. And the high-res NAM model is the most aggressive, and it is going after 8 to 10 inches in some places in here over a foot of snow. Now, again, that is the most aggressive of our weather forecast models. What are others showing? Well, let's go up and look at the European model. Now, what I'm going to play for you here is that vorticity. Look at this. See, it's sweeping through here. This is, again, Saturday evening. And I was going to tell you, if this vorticity maximum could go from here to here, we would be talking about like a historic blizzard. I'm talking like superstorm of 1993 type blizzard. But instead, this guy's going to stay offshore because as we go from Saturday night into Sunday morning, see how quickly the wave ejects? And that's the real thing. Please don't get me wrong. This is a big system coming through, but this one's going to eject. Now, next Tuesday, right here, watch this guy. Tuesday into Wednesday, it's here. Getting in toward Thursday, the low is there. And this one goes through and also sweeps through the Carolinas. So we need to show you what this ends up meaning. So if I go now and show you precipitation type and intensity, what we can now play is blues are snow, the pink is ice, the green is rain. Here we go. Let's get this going. This is now Saturday morning, Saturday midday, Saturday afternoon and evening. Overnight hours getting into Sunday, the system exits, and its speed at which it exits is what ultimately determines why this isn't a big I-95, nor'easter going up the East Coast. But that's system number one. Now we wait. Monday, Tuesday. Here it is. Wednesday, coming across the Mid-South over toward us, there is likely going to be some cold air damming ahead of this, which is why this region is going over back to snow for Wednesday night. And then into Thursday, what we'll need to watch is do we have the risk of some ice accumulating in here as this next coastal low comes through. So let's go have a look at some of these other variables like total snow. So where do I put that? There it is, snowfall. And let's get zoomed in here because we really want to see, zoom back out just a hair. Really want to see what this is going to look like. So here we go. This is now European model solution, getting through the day on Saturday and playing out here. And let's go ahead and grab the next event. This is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Here we go. Thursday, Friday, which means you put together like an 8-day forecast. And we've got, if you got to hover on this, some places capable of picking up 9 to 10 inches of snow through here. The wild card is going to be the coast. And back toward the mountains, there's a good 6 to 10 inches out of this, with pockets, according to the European model, 15. Now, it's one model. We cannot take one model and call it gospel truth. You know that. I've taught you that over the years. But before I go away from this, I do want to show you the ice potential. Remember that most of this is going to be coming from the next system. So as I play it forward, this is through the weekend. See, it's all offshore. But what I'm curious about is right there. That would be next Thursday. So just be aware that the risk is for more ice in this year, and you've already dealt with one ice storm this year. Okay, I need to show you a model comparison. GFS is on the left, the European model is on the right. As I play this forward, what I'm thinking about is here. This is the difference between the models. Earlier in the week, this weekend storm system, the GFS was tossing out 20 inches of snow, and now it's no longer doing that. System exits, next system comes in. Where is it? Right there. This is Wednesday, Thursday. GFS is farther to the north. It's more of a rainfall event. I showed you the European already. It's got the ice and the snow on the backside. So there's still some model differences, which is why we're going to explore this. Over the next 7 days through Thursday night, this is the total snowfall expected in the southeast from the European. We already looked at this in the other mapping, right? Let's go have a look at the same view, but for the AI model. I want to point out how much more aggressive the AI model is in the mountains and on the coast, leaving the middle part of North and South Carolina with 3 to 4 inches of snow. Then we have the GFS, and the GFS model here, again, it has the aggressive corridor in the middle. See how the models are just all over the place? And then I've got one more. This is the blend of models, and it's just gung-ho on snow for everybody. Now, this snow extent could come as far back as this part of Georgia. I was just in Savannah the other day, and we may see some snow showers in Savannah. What I've done, though, to make better sense of this for all of us, is I wanted to show you the National Weather Service's forecast. This is what happens when you take humans, like me, and add our insights. But these guys, they're not national weather forecasters or international weather forecasters like I am. They forecast for their very specific region, and this is out of Atlanta. So take note, they have got, a gradient, 1 to 2 to 3, 4, 5 inches of snow as you approach the South Carolina border. Now, as we get into South Carolina, kind of zoom in here, just have a closer look at this, slide over. They've got, 4 to 6, 4 to 7, 5 to 8 as you continue to press yourself toward North Carolina. Now, why are their amounts higher? Well, first of all, it's very cold. When you have colder air, you tend to get what we call a drier snow. Drier snows are fluffier. Drier snows tend to pile up deeper. We have what's called a higher liquid to snow ratio. So it's normally 1 to 10 or 1 to 12. When you get cold, it's like 1 to 15. So 1 inch of liquid gives you 15. If it gets really cold, it's like 1 to 20. And there you go. That is the National Weather Service out of Columbia. And now let's go over to Raleigh. Now in Raleigh, they actually give you a PDF to read through, and this is their forecast, and I love the dialogue here. Most locations across central North Carolina, 4 to 8. Areas of 10 plus are possible. Most probable around I-95 corridor, as far west as the triangle. All right, you know this. Reasonable high-end totals may exceed 12 to 14 inches. And if we go to the coast, you've got this risk. So they've right now put a 70 to 80% chance of better than 8 inches. You can see all the locations. But I like this. Whiteout conditions possible during the peak of the storm. I showed it to you when it's Saturday, getting into early Sunday morning. That's when you can have the winds fast enough to produce a blizzard out of this. So yeah, it's coming, and we need to be prepared for it. And to remember, the following Thursday is when the next system will likely come through as well. All right, thinking all of that through, I'm going to ask a question, a bigger question about what this pattern is doing. So before we get into the longer range, just know this. Since the start of this winter, we have seen the atmosphere toss out big ridges here and big ridges there. So the flow's gone over this and over that and dove right like this across the country. Did you see where this current storm system's coming from? It's coming from this direction, right? Where's the next one coming from? Here. Why? There's been a lot of cold air, deep troughs in this area. So any long-range forecast I can give you from this point has got to ask, is persistence going to win the day? In other words, is the atmosphere going to want to continue to do this, or is it going to give it up? That's it. That's the big idea. So I'm going to say that because 7 or 8 days from now, 10 days from now, there's still a ridge here and a trough there. You're going, what would be ideal? Well, if you wanted to break drought in this whole area, put a trough here and a ridge there. And systems come right through the middle, and they drag fronts all the way across us. And we get rain. It's mild enough for rain. And that is what breaks soil moisture deficits. As it stands, most models look something like the European. From February 7th to February 13th, they've got clipper systems doing this. Okay, sorry, they come in this direction. But we tend to stay colder and drier. And my problem is that since the start of winter, sorry about that, let's go back to this. Since the start of winter, this whole region, especially here and here, has been dry. But look at these ranks over in Georgia, North and South Carolina. We are talking about one of our drier winters on record, a top 20 driest winter. And if you look at it just since the start of the new year, we need the moisture from this system in this area. Got to have this moisture coming through. We continue to show up on the drought monitor. We're currently at 67% across the United States in drought coverage, but the entirety of AgSouth and Ag Carolina is in drought. And over the last 4 weeks, we've had a 1 to 2 class degradation. Our soil moisture deficits are real. I mean, we can see this, and we need to warm up and rain. We need to warm up and rain. That's the answer. But it's very, very cold, and we're going to have to question what the pattern can possibly do. Now, I keep talking about the pattern. Where did I talk about this a moment ago? I said persistence is a problem right now. Can I show you why? The newest forecast from January 28th, this was released 2 days ago, to February 28th, okay, that 30-day time period, had us drier, and dry to the west of us. It's then trying as you get out farther into February and into March. This is the March, let's just do this, February 15th to March 15th. It is really desperately trying to wake up this pattern. You say, well, what's going on? Well, the atmosphere is trying to take the MJO, the Mad-Julian oscillation, and shove it over into phase 2-3. You're going, I don't know what that means, Eric. I say, oh, it's cool. It tends to just put troughs here. Where have they been? There. You get a trough coming through like that? Oh, yeah, we will rip off storm systems here and go wetter. But I have to just question if this is even a possibility, given that our polar vortex looks exactly like it did in 2014. Keep that year in mind. Look just like it did in 2014. And if the polar vortex is forecast, see this the thicker line in the middle here of all these blue lines? That tells me that if average is here, the polar vortex is going to stay displaced and weakened for a while. And the whole point behind me telling you that is, what have we seen? Remember a moment ago? Ridges west, troughs east. We need to have a ridge here and a trough there, and boom, it goes right in the middle, and we just light the whole thing up. But instead, our temperature pattern looks like this. This is today. This is a 24-hour time period looking at temperature anomalies. So that's today's temperatures compared to average. This is on Saturday. We are running 20 plus degrees colder than average. Sunday, it's like 20 to 25, almost 30. This is the day where we're going to have falling iguanas down in Florida. We can go into Monday, still cold. Tuesday, still cold. Wednesday, look at these temperatures. This is next Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. We just keep going through. This is now February 10th, 11th, and 12th, and we just seem to be unable to shake the Arctic air that's in place here. There's brief warm-ups, just brief interludes, but it tends to stay cooler than average. You can even see it on the blended anomalies here from the European ensemble. There's your next 5 days. Watch. That's day 5 through 10, and this is day 10 through 15. And that's halfway through February, and we don't shake the more persistent, colder air. So you say, well, why? What was the point of telling me all that persistent stuff? Well, warmth ridge, cold trough. See it? And the models are right now doing this. Here is the next 7 days. As I go forward with this, this is week 2, still cooler for us. What about week 3? Still cooler. Week 4 in the forecast. This is the end of February. This is the end of February. Still cooler. Week 5, the beginning of March. Still cooler. And the models don't shake it. So we have to ask, what does this look like? I mean, if we get to March, mid-March, and we're still this cold, that's critical. This is a time of year when we really begin our major warm-up, but we're not seeing the atmosphere give us that. And part of the reason is, even though our trade winds are dying, telling me that this La Niña is on its way out, there is still the impacts of a La Niña happening across the equatorial Pacific. I mean, it is fading fast. Watch November, watch the time. See this? This cold water November and December. Our La Niña was going strong right up to about Christmas. Then in early January, see it fading? Here we're at the end of January, it seems to be on its way out. But yet, we're still getting La Niña-like influences in this pattern. You've seen it in temperature, you've seen it in precipitation all the way through mid-March. So what do we know? This is interesting. I'm going to show you my 3 top analogs, 18, 14, and 9. We tended to stay drier, while Mid-South tended to go wetter, tended to be drier in the Cotton Belt, this part of the Cotton Belt, excuse me. Now, what's fascinating is that when you stitch these years together, all 3 of them, February was not cold. Yet I just told you that this will likely occupy all of that, and only brief interludes of warmer air will get in here. And the reason why I say that is because we're going to try to figure out, do we get into March with a risk of having cold? And I showed you a moment ago, the answer is yes. But those same years, March 18, 14, and 09, of which 14 is the most dominant analog right now, precipitation-wise, we were not overly dry. But temperature-wise, this is what it looked like in March when you stitch all those years together. Now, sit tight. Let's think this through. When I use every year that had an La Niña in winter that transitioned to El Niño by late spring, which is what we think this one's going to do. Okay, it's going to transition to El Niño by late spring. Our precipitation patterns were not that far off of average for March. Okay, all of those years. We were a little drier south, but it wasn't aggressively so. Maybe a half inch off of normal using all the years. Temperature-wise, once we got later into March using all of the years, we actually went over mild. So my 3 top analogs, 18, 14, and 09, they do not. They give March cold risks into here. But when you put in all the other ones, it tends to be a little more mild. Now, let me show you the problem with this. These are all, these are the most recent 6 times that we've had a La Niña winter transitioning into an El Niño summer. And now we're just looking at March, so we're looking at the intermediate time period here. So 2023, mild. 2018, one of my analogs, cold. 2014, Arctic. But 2009, when this happened, we were closer to average. Same thing with 2006, and we were warm in 2002. If you just step back and look at this, though, you see that, my goodness, there's nothing consistent about it. Oh, and here's the precipitation. Oh, sorry. I think I got precipitation here somewhere. What did I do with it? There it is. Look at this. March precipitation, 2023 dry, 2018 dry, 2014 wet, 2009 wet, 2006 bone dry, 2002 mega snows and cold and crazy weather that came through here, but we were near normal. So when I show you all these analogs, you just have to understand there's a wide range of data that goes into making those graphics. Now I flashed over these because now I have to show you the models. This is March to May and April to June. Remembering the whole time period La Niña is fading. They're actually anchoring the driest weather back here in the western corn belt, the wheat belt, part of the cotton belt. They've got dryness that's down south, March to May, but by the time we get to April, May, June, they've kind of washed it out. That's one model, the National Multi-Model Ensemble. It's actually 8 models, but 1 map, 2 maps, my goodness. And here's what the new European spring forecast looks like, March to May, April to June. March to May is over here. Again, some dryness here. Most of it's anchored west. And we see just, I guess, a mix near normal. We don't see any major signals. So that's where our models are living with all this. So what do we do? I'm just going to come back to what I told you in the first place and remind you of something. Looking out this far, when we're watching all these things transition, I'm going to ask, is persistence my best guide? And that's going to be the hard question to answer. I'm showing you the data so you have something to bank this off of, but I'm going to remind you that historically, March is a volatile month for us. I'm just going to say right now that I think there is early March cold risk. The wild card is going to be precipitation. Now, I went out and made this international as well because I want you to see what else is happening as we go from La Niña to El Niño. Typically, when you get into the heart of summer, June to September, We tend to see a lot of ridge ride and thunderstorms here. We tend to be a little drier in the eastern Corn Belt, but there's no strong signal for us. See this? Strongest signals are with the hurricane season, which tends to be less active than normal, and major drought issues over here, and a lack of a good Indian monsoon. That's where the strongest correlations are. So we did stretch it out just to make a story here of where this is all going. But that's our latest thinking. That's what we know right now. Into summer, I do have to mention that purely correlating with La Niña. So this was analogs. This is correlating with ENSO. Sorry, I said La Niña. I meant El Niño, the opposite. We tended to see, look at this. This is July to September, slight drier risk. This is a correlation map, which means this is not deficits. This is just, hey, more often than not, we tended to be a little drier here, especially into Texas. But our correlations with temperatures are not a scorching hot summer. It tends to be hotter in Texas to the West Coast. I don't know. That's what we're going to have to use. But remember, correlations for El Niño in summer are weak at best. Now, there's another group of people that are watching this very closely as well. I'm going to finish up with a bit on South America. We have watched lately southern Brazil into Argentina, specifically Buenos Aires, Cordoba, Santa Fe, Entre Rios go over dry. Meanwhile, Mato Grosso rapidly harvesting. They were at 14% last Friday. It's too early in the day to tell you what they are this Friday. I'm going to guess 21%. They've been going up 7% a week. And the NDVI values for the crops in Brazil are right now at their 5th, almost 6th straight week of record high. So this first crop of beans is quite impressive. What we all want to know is, how does this progress into the future? Because the rate at which the soybeans get taken out is a function of the precipitation. And we're seeing the next 2 weeks very wet in this area, which could slow down harvest, maybe in Mato Grosso do Sul, Goiás, Minas Gerais, or Paraná, or Sao Paulo, which are these two states. But every model I've got is showing dry down here. And there may be a developing story in Argentina with drought hitting their crops. Can it be enough to offset the drought that is, can it be enough to offset the bumper crop that is in Brazil? I don't know. But you need to watch carefully the speed at which the safrinha corn goes in Brazil. Because if it's too wet in these areas for more than just the next 2 weeks, but even longer into March, then they're going to be delayed. And that is going to push their entire crop calendar. That affects our markets, and it starts to put them at greater risk of having, some issues with the safrinha crop. I'll say two things to finish this up. First, in South America, I have never seen, in my professional career forecasting, Brazil string together 8 straight months of incredible weather. And they've just had 4, almost 5 good months of it. So we do need to be watching out for that. That's called poor man's statistics, though. I don't have a map to show you. The second thing is, as you come back to the United States and we just think about our temperature pattern going into spring, well, on Monday, in this great state, or Commonwealth, I guess, Pennsylvania, we're going to yank a would-be hibernating rodent out of a cage. There's a pretty good chance it's going to bite the guy that picks him up with the top hat, but we're going to ask its opinion of the upcoming spring. Remember that currently the skill score of the groundhog is 38%. If it's 50-50, you could toss a coin. If it was better than this, you could use it. But at 38%, you should bet against the groundhog. That's all. I love the day, though. It's a great excuse for Pennsylvanians to drink before dawn. I think that's the best part about it. All right, that's all. You have a great weekend. Be safe. We'll watch these patterns together as we go into the month of February. But just be aware. I think we have plenty of access to Arctic air. That's it. Thanks.